AITA for telling my sister she's not really the kind of mom she says thinks she is? Story 1. My sister, we'll call Kamantha 40s, is much older than me, mid-20s. Kamantha is a mom, and it's her whole personality. She constantly posts on social media that her home is open to any kid who might not feel like they have a place to go. She gets real into it, and every fifth or so post is one of those memes about being the cool place to crash, or that she wants to be the house where all the kids can just walk in and grab a soda. She has her kids' friends call her Mama K. Whatever. Recently we were talking on the phone and she cursed and said, "Not again," and said she had to be quiet so no one knew she was home. She then ranted about her neighbors who yell and scream all the time, and their daughter who we'll call Annabelle 7. I guess Annabelle and Kamantha's daughter Petal 8 are friends. Annabelle comes over every day or tries to, rings the bell and sits on the porch if they aren't home, it said. Kamantha said when Annabelle comes over she's always asking for food and Kamantha feeds her most days. Kamantha said that Annabelle's older sister Betty 15 refuses to go in the house when the dad is home. She will even sell EP on their porch. To me, this screams that these girls are at the very least food insecure, likely neglected, and possibly AB said. Kamantha said that she was just done dealing with someone else's kid. I laughed and said, "Hey, so much for all those Facebook posts, AOH ... Was she pissed? She asked me what I meant, and I said that she posts about being the cool mom and the place all the neighborhood kids could crash, but then when someone actually seems to need that safe place ... she's hiding in her bathroom and pretending she's not at home. I said that I guess she's not really the kind of mom she says she is. She went mental, screaming at me about how I don't know anything. Granted, Kamantha said that she'd be fine with it if the girl didn't lie Petal in school. I asked her what Annabelle had done to lie Petal, and she said that occasionally Annabelle doesn't sit with Petal at lunch and one time kicked mulch at her during recess. To me, these didn't sound like lying, but like typical playground conflicts ... and frankly a pretty weak excuse, and I told her so. Anyway, Kamantha isn't talking to me currently and keeps sending me hateful texts about not knowing anything about kids. While I 100% don't think she's responsible for dealing with Annabelle, I do think she's being an asshole for saying she's that kind of mom online, but then ... not actually doing it when it's happening in real life. So ... AITA? Edit, I did ask during the call if she had called CPS on the parents. Kamantha said she doesn't have enough evidence to make a report. I told her that SL-epping outside rather than inside because the dad was home was evidence, and she told me to shut up and not tell her what to do. I also live 3 states away and don't know any of the addresses or even the streets that Betty Annabelle live off of, so I don't actually think I can call CPS, as all I have is a third-hand conversation as evidence and no specific location. First comment. Nah, but I feel so bad for Annabelle and Betty. It sounds like you gave your sister a bit of a reality check and now she's questioning her identity as the cool mom, or at least mad at you for pointing out the hypocrisy. She's technically not responsible for Annabelle, and I bet it gets really frustrating having an extra mouth to feed, not to mention 8-year-old to entertain all the time, but ... put up or shut up, right? I probably wouldn't antagonize her anymore about it, but maybe it will make her reevaluate what she shares online. Has anyone called CPS on Annabelle and Betty's parents? They should definitely have an issue with the older one SL-epping outside rather than be around her father. Second comment. Few things. 1. NTA, her reaction screams insecure. She knows that she's putting on a performance. As most people do online these days, she is not the mom she thinks she is, and she's worse than she thinks she is. What kind of person complains because a child wants to eat food after boasting so heavily about being the person that wants to give food and a safe place to others? A weird and performative one. 2. CPS should be called. If not by your sister, then now by you. SL-epping on the porch because you're terrified of a parent does not scream teenage angst, petulance, or dramatics. It screams that something is wrong. Very, very wrong. Hierarchy of needs states the most basic things you need to begin feeling safe are food and housing. Clearly, both of these girls are lacking in one or the other. 3. Your sister is ridiculous. I hate parents and people that show themselves as one way online, but act completely differently offline. And I understand that that is the world we live in, but as somebody who quite literally has never done that, it infuriates me to no end. If she wants to be the cool and safe house where all the kids feel they can come, then she needs to own that. But what a disservice she is doing to kids who maybe see her post or have heard her talk about how she wants to be that household, who want to utilize that only to be met with passive aggressiveness and anger. And maybe it's not up front, maybe she doesn't act like that in front of the kids, but people can read energy. Kids and teenagers especially. She either needs to stop promoting herself as that mom or start acting like it. 4. Not only was your comment accurate, I'm glad you made it. Someone needed to tell her, she needed to hear it. NTA. 3rd comment, AITA. I love my dogs. I post about them all the time. I advocate for others to rescue dogs. They still drive me completely bonkers, and there are days I wish they would just leave me alone. You can love your job and have days when all you want to do is quit. Your sister can want to be a safe haven for these kids and also feel the financial stress of having to feed them or feel burnt out or over it all. It's unfortunate that the girls don't have somewhere else to go when your sister needs a break, but your sister is only human and she needs to put her own daughter first. Story 2. AITA for how I told my family that I have cancer. I 24F discovered a couple weeks ago that I have breast cancer. It came as a real shock to me because I had practically no symptoms. I was at the hospital for a different reason and from there referred internally to the mammography suite. That's not really important to the story, but just a little context on how I was diagnosed. But the good news is that doctors were able to catch it early and the outlook is good. My problem, aside from the obvious, is that I had no idea how to tell my family. I knew they would panic regardless, which is understandable as I lost 2 great aunts to breast cancer and my dad also has stomach cancer. So I just kind of avoided telling them because there's a lot going on in my family at the minute. I didn't want to put any more on their plate. But then I did my first round of chemo and it floored me. I knew then that I had to tell them because I genuinely couldn't go through that alone again. This is where I'm possibly the My family are really bad with emotional stuff. We're not good at expressing ourselves. We can laugh and make jokes and that, but when it comes to serious matters, we're all quite awkward. And I knew that this was going to be awkward and I didn't really want to face that. My mom I could deal with. She's a lot better with stuff like this, but I really didn't want to tell my dad. He's the suffer in silence type, and I knew it would break him to learn about this, especially since he's going through the same thing. So to tell them, I bought a cake and a card to give my dad. They said, "Congratulations. It's twins with the diagnosis outreach letter from my GP." Reactions were mixed. My dad, while really upset, did find it funny. My mom is distraught and did not. Siblings are split, some found it funny, some found it insensitive to my parents. Personally, I thought it was funny, but they did raise some good points. In the end, though, it's mostly forgotten as they're all still in shock and focused on the diagnosis itself. It's been a couple days and I'm starting to think that maybe it was wrong of me to do it like that. I could have just gotten over my awkwardness and had a mature conversation with my parents about it, but it's too late for that now. AITA? First comment. Nah. No one gets to tell you how to cope with your diagnosis. What you did wasn't cruel. It wasn't done with any kind of malice. It was done from a place of authenticity. It was awkward and difficult for you to share this information. So sorry if your family found it awkward and difficult to receive this information. It's nothing you didn't experience yourself. I'm not going to say they're TA for responding negatively, because it's a trip for them too, and they have a right to their own genuine reaction, but I don't think it's your responsibility to coddle them in this scenario. They're adults, and they're family. If they love you, they will ultimately see the pain and challenge you were facing alone and extend some grace if they didn't feel your approach was exactly how they'd prefer it. Second comment, NTA. It is never easy to have this conversation. It is never not awkward. At least you told them, even if it was in a clunky, wacky way. My uncle died of cancer he had had for years and hadn't told anyone else about until he couldn't function anymore because he didn't want to burden anyone it hurt, his whole family, that he didn't let them know until it was too late for most of them to even see him before he passed. Not 6 months later, I had to have the cancer talk with my then 6-year-old son as he had cancer. The timing sucked partly because he had just lost a great uncle he loved. How hard it was to keep his spirits up when he knew that cancer kills. So no, you're NTA for trying to bring some levity into this horrible conversation. You're the one with the cancer. You can choose how to try to break the bad news to your family. Third comment. As someone who had the same dilemma, I hear you. My family doesn't handle things well and they get very overwhelming when it's emotional stuff. When I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, my cis was on her way to bring me snacks because my biopsy left me with massive blood loss. I really considered not telling her, but then realized she may be the most sane option in my family I had. So I leaned on that and asked her to tell people and let them know not to ask me much for a few days, as I was currently under a lot of physical distress. My family did try to guilt me when they did finally talk to me, but I knew I wasn't the asshole for how I handled it. It is my body and my decision to let people in on the situation. I know it's hard for family to hear, but if you cope best with humor, that is absolutely fine. I'm the same. When I told my best friend, she told me God was punishing me for letting my Sims woohoo before marriage. It kept the situation real to me without making it this continuous daunting cloud. It helped me so much to joke about it. Nah, you did nothing wrong, and intensely emotional stuff can be hard, especially regarding parents with their kids. Just know you are not wrong even if they are upset. Emotions tend to get misplaced when cancer is said.